The teacher blocked him and records showed another guardian mistake or planned. Look closely.
Mom, that was the first thing I heard. Not the school bell, not the teachers shouting over the playground noise, not the squeak of sneakers on concrete or the hum of parents waiting by the gate. Just my son's voice, high, excited, full of that kind of joy you feel in your bones before you even understand what's happening. And for one perfect second, everything was exactly how it was supposed to be. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. I had just stepped through the side entrance of Maple Ridge Elementary, my purse still hanging off one shoulder, my phone in my hand, my heart racing for a completely different reason. I'd been gone 5 days. 5 long days. The longest Ethan and I had ever been apart. I'd told him I might be back by the weekend, but I hadn't promised. I wanted to surprise him. I wanted to see his face light up. I wanted one of those moments moms remember forever, the kind you replay in your head when life gets hard. And I got it. At first, he saw me from across the blacktop and lit up like the sun had dropped straight into his chest. His little backpack bounced against his shoulders as he broke into a run, weaving past 2 kids near the hopscotch lines, his grin so wide it almost made me laugh. "Mom!" he yelled again, louder this time, like he couldn't believe I was really there. I crouched down automatically, arms opening before I even thought about it. That's when everything went wrong. A hand shot out and grabbed him. Hard. He jerked backwards so suddenly his sneakers scraped across the pavement. His body twisted. His face changed not from happiness to fear exactly, but from certainty to confusion. And standing there beside him was a woman in a beige cardigan and school lanyard, one hand locked around his upper arm, the other raised toward me like I was the danger. "Stop," she snapped. The whole moment shattered. My arms were still open, my smile was still halfway there, but my brain couldn't catch up. I stared at her, then at Ethan, then back at her, waiting for the part where she realized she'd made some ridiculous mistake. Instead, she pulled him farther behind her and said, clear as day, "That's not your mother." I actually laughed. Not because anything was funny, because sometimes when something is so insane, your brain rejects it before your mouth does. "What?" I said. Ethan looked at me, then at her, and that, more than her words, more than her grip on him, more than the fact that other parents had started turning to stare, that was the first thing that made my stomach drop. He looked confused. Not scared of me, not exactly, but uncertain. Have you ever had a moment where the person you love most in the world looks at you like they need help deciding who you are? That kind of moment doesn't just hurt, it rearranges something inside you. I stood up slowly. I'm his mother. The woman didn't move. She was in her 40s maybe, with clipped brown hair and the kind of expression that suggested she was used to being obeyed. Her badge read, Lila Grayson, teacher. She tightened her hand on Ethan's arm, not enough to seem violent, just enough to remind everyone watching that she believed she was protecting him. "I need you to step back," she said. Step back? From my son? I blinked, trying to make sense of the scene. The playground noise around us had changed now. It had that strange, muffled quality everything gets when people sense a problem and start pretending not to listen while listening to every word. A few kids had stopped dead near the monkey bars. One parent by the pickup line was openly staring. Another staff member near the doors had gone still, watching us with narrowed eyes. And then I noticed something else. A woman standing a few feet away. She hadn't said anything yet. She wasn't rushing forward, wasn't confused, wasn't alarmed. She was just watching. She looked to be around my age, maybe early 30s. Neat clothes, soft beige coat, dark blonde hair tucked behind one ear, calm face, too calm, not the face of a stranger witnessing a scene. The face of someone waiting for something to play out exactly the way they expected. I looked back at Ethan and forced my voice to soften. "Baby," I said, smiling even though my pulse was pounding. "It's me." He swallowed. His eyes filled not with tears but with that awful searching look little kids get when they know the answer should be easy and somehow it isn't. "Mom," he said quietly. The teacher leaned down fast. "Stay with me, Ethan." I felt heat rush up my neck, my chest tightened so sharply I could barely breathe. "Why are you talking to him like that?" I asked. "Why are you touching him? Let him go." Miss Grayson didn't even flinch. "Ma'am, I'm asking you one more time to step away from the child." "The child?" "Not your son, not even him. the child. That's when I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding that would clear up in 10 seconds. This wasn't a teacher being overly cautious. She believed what she was saying. Or worse, she'd already been told to believe it. My gaze snapped back to the silent woman. And right then, Miss Grayson glanced at her. Just for a second, but I saw it, a tiny movement, a confirmation, like they were connected, like whatever nightmare I'd just stepped into had started long before I arrived. My mouth went dry. "Who is that?" I asked. Neither of them answered. Ethan shifted, trying to step around the teacher to get a better look at me. "Mom, you said—" Miss Grayson pulled him back again. Not violently, smoothly, practiced. That was somehow worse. A staff member appeared at the entrance and whispered something I couldn't fully hear, but I caught enough. Should I call Mr. Reeves? The principal. My heart lurched. Why would they call the principal unless they thought I was a threat? Unless somebody had already told them to expect me? And then the quiet woman finally moved. One step. Then another. She came to stand just close enough to be part of the moment, folding her hands in front of her like she belonged there, like she had every right. I stared at her. She stared back. No panic, no guilt, just a strange, controlled sadness that didn't feel real. And then she said the words that made the ground seem to shift under my feet. "He doesn't recognize her anymore." That was the moment I stopped feeling embarrassed and started feeling afraid. "He doesn't recognize her anymore." I want you to sit with that sentence for a second. Because when a stranger says something like that about your child, you don't just hear the words. You feel them hit hard, like something cold sliding under your ribs. I stared at the woman, trying to place her. Had I seen her before? At pickup? At a birthday party? In one of those half-forgotten school emails where names blur together? But no, I would have remembered her. Not because she was especially striking, but because of how steady she was. Too steady, too prepared. "What did you just say?" I asked. She tilted her head slightly as if she pitied me. "I said he doesn't recognize you anymore." My whole body went rigid. Recognize me anymore? What is that supposed to mean? Before she could answer, Ethan made a small sound, almost a whimper, and looked from her to me again. That tiny movement cracked something in me. He knew my face. I knew he did. I had kissed, scraped knees, packed lunches, stayed awake through fevers, memorized the exact shape of his baby curls when he slept. You do not mother a child for 6 years and then vanish from his mind in 5 days. Unless someone has been working very hard to make that happen. That thought came and went so fast I almost didn't catch it. But once it was there, it stayed. I stepped forward again, not fast, not aggressive, just enough to close some of the distance this teacher had forced between me and my son. "Ethan," I said, softer now, "look at me." "It's Mommy. We had pancakes with chocolate chips last Sunday. You dropped syrup on your dinosaur pajamas and told me not to put them in the wash because you said they were lucky pajamas, remember?" His eyebrows pulled together. For 1 second, real recognition flickered in his face. I saw it. So did Miss Grayson, because her hand immediately tightened on his shoulder. "Please don't coach him," she said. Coach him? That word lit a fuse in me. "I am not coaching him," I snapped. "I'm reminding my son who I am because apparently no one here has any idea what they're doing." A few parents by the gate shifted uncomfortably. I could feel their attention now, that ugly public kind that turns your personal nightmare into background entertainment. One mom pulled her daughter a little closer. A dad near the bike rack lowered his phone, but not before I noticed it had been pointed in our direction. Perfect. Humiliation, live, and in color. The woman finally stepped forward and extended her hand as if we were at some polite community event instead of in the middle of my life splitting open. "My name is Claire," she said. "Claire Dunning." I looked at her hand and didn't take it. She let it fall without embarrassment. "I've been caring for Ethan." "No," I said immediately. "You haven't." Her expression barely changed. "I understand why this is upsetting." That calm voice again, that maddening measured tone, like she was the reasonable one, like I was some unstable stranger creating a scene. "No," I repeated, louder this time. "You don't understand anything. I am Ethan's mother. I've never heard of you. And I'd really like to know why my son's teacher is acting like you belong here and I don't." Miss Grayson answered before Claire could. "Miss Dunning is listed as Ethan's guardian." The world didn't stop. That's the weird part. It should have. Something that absurd should tear open the sky or silence the playground or do something dramatic enough to match the insanity of it. But no. A whistle blew somewhere in the distance. A child laughed near the swings. A breeze moved through the chain link fence. And my son's teacher told me another woman was listed as his guardian. I actually shook my head like that alone might reset the scene. That's impossible. Claire folded her arms lightly. The school has my information. I don't care what the school has, I said. They have the wrong information. Then I looked at Ethan again. Really looked. His little face was pinched with stress. His fingers kept catching the edge of his backpack strap. He did that when he was overwhelmed. He'd always done that. Even at 3 years old, when he got nervous in crowded places. I crouched a little, trying to get into his line of sight around Miss Grayson. Hey, buddy, can you tell them who gave you Captain Blue? That was his stuffed dinosaur. His favorite one. Ragged at the tail from years of being dragged everywhere. He never slept without it. Ethan blinked. Captain Blue, he repeated. That's right, I said, forcing a smile. Who gave him to you? There was a pause. A beat too long. Then Ethan looked toward Claire and said, She did. The air left my lungs. For a second, I thought maybe I'd heard him wrong. Maybe he meant something else. Maybe he was confused by the pressure, by the crowd, by the way adults were talking around him like he wasn't standing there falling apart. No, I said gently. No, sweetheart, I gave you Captain Blue. When you had that ear infection and wouldn't sleep unless I held you, remember? Ethan's mouth trembled. Claire reached into her handbag. That motion caught all my attention at once. She pulled out her phone, unlocked it with one smooth swipe, and turned the screen toward me. There was Ethan. My Ethan. Holding Captain Blue. Standing beside Claire. Both of them smiling. The photo looked recent. Very recent. He was wearing the green raincoat I'd bought him in March. The one with the missing top button. My skin went cold. How did you get that? I whispered. Claire's eyes never left mine. And for the first time, I felt something worse than anger. I felt the shape of something planned. How did you get that? That question didn't come out strong. It didn't come out like a demand or an accusation. It came out thin, unsteady, like something inside me already knew the answer wasn't going to make sense. Claire didn't rush to respond. That was the first thing I noticed. Most people, when confronted, react. They defend, they stumble, they over-explain. But Claire, she just watched me absorb the image on her phone like she had all the time in the world. I take pictures of Ethan, she said simply, like any guardian would. Guardian. There it was again. That word, repeated like it was fact instead of fiction. No, I said, shaking my head harder now, trying to physically reject what was happening. No, you don't get to just say that. You don't get to just, what is this? What is this setup? Miss Grayson stepped in again, her tone sharper now. Ma'am, I need you to lower your voice. My voice? I snapped. You're letting a stranger claim my child and you're worried about my voice? That did it. The last bit of quiet observation around us cracked. I could feel the shift, people no longer pretending not to watch. A murmur spread. Someone whispered. A kid got pulled away. The tension wasn't contained anymore. It was spreading outward, turning this into something bigger, messier. And still, Claire didn't raise her voice. Instead, she reached into her bag again. Maybe this will help, she said. Help. That word almost made me laugh again. She pulled out a folded set of papers. Clean. Organized. Clipped neatly together like they had been prepared ahead of time. My stomach dropped before she even handed them over. Miss Grayson took the papers instead and scanned them quickly, nodding as she did. These are already on file, she said, almost to herself. What are those? I demanded. Claire answered calmly. School authorization forms. Emergency contact information, pickup clearance. Every word felt like a brick being stacked on my chest. That's not possible, I said again, but now it sounded weaker. I filled those out myself when he transferred here. Claire tilted her head slightly. Did you? That question, so soft, so controlled, hit harder than anything she'd said so far. Before I could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. All right, that's enough. We all turned. Mr. Reeves, the principal, was walking toward us with measured steps. Mid-50s, composed, the kind of man who carried authority without needing to raise his voice. He looked from me to Claire to Miss Grayson, taking in the scene in seconds. But what mattered most? He didn't look surprised. That realization sent a sharp pulse of something cold through me. You must be Naomi, he said. Not, are you Naomi? Not confusion, recognition. Yes, I said quickly, grabbing onto that. Yes, I'm Naomi Carter, Ethan's mother. Finally, can you please explain what's going on here? He held up a hand, not dismissive, but controlling the pace. We're going to sort this out, but first I need everyone to take a step back. I'm not stepping anywhere without my son, I said immediately. His eyes met mine, steady. That depends on verification. Verification. The word landed like a slap. You're kidding me, I said. You actually think I'm lying? We've been informed, he said carefully, that there may be a custodial dispute. The world narrowed. A what? A custodial dispute, he repeated. And until we clarify the situation, we have to follow protocol. There is no dispute, I said, each word sharper now. There has never been a dispute. His father isn't even in the picture. Claire spoke quietly from beside us. That's not what we were told. I turned on her so fast my vision blurred. Who told you anything about my life? She didn't answer. Of course she didn't. Because this wasn't random. This wasn't confusion. This was constructed. Mr. Reeves, I said, forcing my voice to steady. Call whoever you need to call. Check whatever system you need to check. But you are not keeping my child from me because of paperwork that I didn't sign. He nodded once. We will verify everything. Then he gestured slightly toward the office. In the meantime, I'm going to ask you to come with me. No. The word came out instantly. I'm not leaving him. Behind Miss Grayson, Ethan shifted again. His small hand, hesitant, uncertain, slid into Claire's. And this time, he didn't pull away. My chest tightened so sharply I thought I might actually collapse. Ethan, I said, softer now, almost pleading, come here. He looked at me. Really looked. And then he said the words that cut deeper than anything else so far. I don't know. Silence hit like a vacuum. Not no. Not rejection. Uncertainty. Which somehow felt worse. Because uncertainty can be shaped, influenced, rewritten. Mr. Reeves exhaled slowly. Until we resolve this, Ethan will remain with the listed guardian. Listed guardian. Claire's fingers tightened gently around his. And this time, Ethan didn't resist. I stared at them, something inside me shifting from confusion into something sharper, something more focused. Because this wasn't just wrong anymore. This was deliberate. And I was starting to realize I hadn't walked into a misunderstanding. I had walked into a plan. I had walked into a plan. That thought didn't come with panic this time. It came with clarity. Sharp, cold, focused. Because once you stop trying to make something make sense and start accepting that it was designed not to, you begin to see the cracks differently. And suddenly, I started noticing everything. Ethan's hand in Claire's. Not tight, not afraid, just familiar. Miss Grayson's posture. Still guarded but no longer uncertain, like she believed she was on the right side of this. Mr. Reeves. Calm, controlled, too prepared. And Claire? Still watching me like she'd already calculated every possible move I could make. So I changed mine. Fine, I said. The word surprised all of them, including me. Mr. Reeves blinked slightly. Fine. You want verification? I continued, my voice steady now. Let's verify. A pause. A shift. The energy changed. Because I wasn't reacting anymore. I was thinking. I want the police involved, I added. That landed, not loudly, not dramatically, but it landed. For the first time, something flickered across Miss Grayson's face. Uncertainty. Just a crack, but it was there. Mr. Reeves studied me for a second longer this time, then nodded. That can be arranged. Good, I said. Arrange it. Silence stretched for a moment. Claire finally spoke. That seems unnecessary. I turned to her slowly. No, I said. What's unnecessary is a stranger holding my son's hand while a school tells me I need permission to speak to him. Her expression didn't fully break, but something behind her eyes shifted. Pressure. Good. While we wait, I continued, I'll make a call too. I stepped back, pulling my phone from my bag with fingers that were steady now because they had to be. I scrolled fast, ignoring the way my heart kept trying to pound its way back into panic. I hit the contact. Rachel, I said the second she picked up, I need you at Maple Ridge Elementary, right now. My sister didn't ask questions. She heard my voice. I'm coming, she said and hung up. Good. I lifted my gaze again, and that's when I started really looking. Not emotionally. Strategically. Claire's documents were still in Miss Grayson's hands. I stepped closer, not enough to provoke, just enough to see. Dates, signatures, official stamps. At a glance, everything looked right. But at a glance is exactly how people get away with things. Can I see that? I asked. Miss Grayson hesitated, then handed them over, likely because refusing now would look worse. I flipped through the pages. Quick at first, then slower. And there it was. A date. Subtle. Easy to miss. But wrong. The authorization form was dated 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, I had been the one picking Ethan up every single day. Every day. No interruptions, no substitutions. So, how did a new guardian get approved during a time when I was physically present? My grip on the paper tightened. I turned to the next page. Signature. My name, but not my handwriting. Close. Very close, but not mine. And then it hit me. Not all at once, but like a memory dragging itself to the surface. My wallet, 2 months ago, gone. I'd canceled my cards, replaced what I could, told myself it was inconvenient but manageable. ID, insurance, personal information, everything someone would need to become me on paper. My stomach dropped. Slowly this time. Heavier. More certain. I looked up at Claire. Really looked at her. And for the first time, she smiled. Not wide. Not obvious. But enough. Enough to confirm it. You didn't just show up, I said quietly. No one else spoke. No one interrupted. Because something in my tone had changed again. This wasn't confusion anymore. This was recognition. You built this, I continued, piece by piece. Claire's eyes held mine. And for the first time, she didn't deny it. Instead, she said softly, "You left more behind than you think." The words settled into the space between us. Heavy, deliberate, final. And in that moment, I understood. Not everything. Not yet. But enough to know this wasn't random. This wasn't impulsive. This was planned. Carefully. Patiently. And I had just stepped into the middle of it. You left more behind than you think. That sentence didn't echo. It settled. Heavy, precise, final. And for the first time since this started, everything inside me aligned, not emotionally, but logically. The confusion, the paperwork, Ethan's hesitation, the school's certainty, it all pointed in one direction now. This wasn't chaos. It was construction. And constructions leave evidence. The sound of approaching sirens cut through the tension. Not loud, not dramatic, but enough. Enough to shift the balance. Mr. Reeves straightened slightly. Miss Grayson's grip loosened just a fraction. And Claire didn't move. Didn't flinch. But that calm she'd been wearing so perfectly, it tightened. 2 officers stepped onto the blacktop minutes later. Calm, observant, used to walking into situations where everyone claims certainty and no one agrees on truth. "All right," one of them said, scanning the group. "Who made the call?" "I did," I said immediately. "And I did as well," Mr. Reeves added. "Good. Let everything come into the light. I'm Naomi Carter," I continued, stepping forward. "That's my son, and that woman has been impersonating me." The word impersonating landed exactly how I wanted it to. The officers exchanged a quick glance. "Okay," one said, "we're going to sort this out step by step. Everyone stay calm." Step by step. Perfect. Because step by step, this falls apart. They started with IDs. Claire handed hers over first. Of course she did. Confident, prepared. The officer examined it, then looked at me. "And yours?" "I don't have it," I said. "It was stolen 2 months ago." A pause. That could have hurt me. If I didn't have more, I reported it, I added quickly. I replaced what I could, but she, I pointed at Claire, used it. The second officer stepped closer. Do you have any supporting identification, digital records, medical documents, anything that connects you to the child? Yes, I said, already unlocking my phone. Pediatric records, insurance, photos, school enrollment emails, emergency contacts. I handed everything over. And this is where things started to shift. Not fast, not dramatic, but undeniable. The officer scrolled, paused, zoomed in, looked again. Same child, he muttered to his partner. Obviously, I said. But then he looked at Claire. Ma'am, he said, how long have you been listed as guardian? Several weeks, she replied calmly. Can you explain how that process occurred? Emergency authorization, she said. His mother was unavailable. Unavailable. I almost laughed, but I didn't need to, because the officer was already looking back down at the documents. Ma'am, he said slowly, this authorization is dated during a period where he glanced at me, then back at the screen. Records show the child was consistently checked out by Naomi Carter. Silence. Small, but critical. Miss Grayson shifted beside us. Mr. Reeves's jaw tightened. Claire didn't answer. That was the first mistake. The officer continued, and this signature? He held the paper up slightly. Doesn't match the verified signature on medical records. Second mistake. Now the structure cracked. Ma'am, the second officer said to Claire, we're going to need you to come with us. That's when Ethan let go of her hand. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Just quietly. Like something invisible had released. He looked at me again. And this time, there was no hesitation. Mom, he said. Everything inside me broke at once. Yes, I breathed. Yes, baby, I'm right here. He ran to me, and no one stopped him. Not the teacher, not the principal, not anyone. I dropped to my knees and wrapped my arms around him so tightly I could feel his heartbeat against mine, fast, uneven, real. I'm sorry, he whispered. That hurt more than anything else. No, I said, pulling back just enough to look at him. You have nothing to be sorry for, nothing. Behind us, Claire was being guided away. No resistance, no outburst. Just that same eerie calm, except now it had nowhere to stand. The investigation unfolded quickly after that. Claire Dunning had found my lost wallet. Not by accident, she had been in the same grocery store that day. Security footage later confirmed it. She watched me realize it was missing, watched me panic, and instead of turning it in, she kept it. Used it. She built an identity, step by step. Used my ID to access basic personal information. Contacted the school posing as me during temporary absence. Submitted forged guardianship forms. Inserted herself, gradually, never all at once. Became a familiar face before anyone questioned her. And Ethan? She didn't take him. She replaced me around him. Pickups, small gifts, conversations. Routine. Carefully, slowly, until confusion became possible. Emotional payoff. The first night after everything ended, Ethan didn't let go of my hand. Not even when he fell asleep. And I didn't move. Not once. Because there's something that changes when you realize how close you came to losing someone, not physically, but psychologically. How easily reality can be bent if someone is patient enough. I cried. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly, sitting beside him, holding his hand in the dark. Relief doesn't feel like celebration. It feels like exhaustion finally letting go. Claire was charged with identity theft, fraud, custodial interference, forgery. The case gained attention fast because it wasn't loud. It wasn't forceful. It was subtle. And that made it worse. The school faced investigation. Miss Grayson was placed on administrative leave. Mr. Reeves issued a formal apology, but it didn't stop the district from launching a full review of their verification policies. Other parents demanded changes. And they got them. Stricter ID checks. Dual authorization systems. No more temporary overrides without direct confirmation. As for me, I filed a civil case. Not out of anger, out of necessity. Because what happened wasn't just a mistake. It was a failure that almost cost me my child. Final resolution moment. 3 weeks later, I stood outside a different school. Smaller, stricter, careful. Ethan walked beside me, his hand firmly in mine. "No surprises today?" he asked. I smiled slightly. No surprises. The bell rang. Kids ran across the yard. And then he did it again. He let go of my hand and ran ahead, turning back halfway with that same bright smile. "Mom!" I opened my arms. And this time, no one stopped him. No hesitation. No confusion. Just certainty. He collided into me, laughing, and I held him just as tightly as before, but now there was no fear underneath it. Just presence. Just real. Just ours. And that was enough.
So tell me, was this obsession, identity theft, or something even more calculated?